bringing you a steady stream of thought-provoking ideas and cutting-edge innovation. You're listening to Society and the State. Life, liberty, and your pursuit of happiness. Now, your hosts, Connor Boyack and Brian Hyde.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. Connor Boyack is here, and we are talking today with Commander Dale Brown with the Threat Management Center. Now, this is going to be one of the most interesting shows that we have done, Connor, in that we're going to be talking about protection of people and property with privatized policing and privatized security. And Commander Brown, you have been a leading figure across the nation in terms of this movement. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led you this direction.
Well, originally I'm from a suburban area called University of Michigan's hometown, which is Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor, Michigan is mostly a giant college town. And, I grew up in a place where police were highly responsive and responsible, and we didn't really have any complaints related to law enforcement whatsoever. Median income, I think, is approximately $50,000 to $75,000 a year, and 150,000 people that live there, population-wise. So, it's a mid-sized city. And when I moved to Detroit many years later, I found something completely different, a completely different way of dealing with public safety and people in general. And I used my background as a martial artist combined with I was an airborne paratrooper. When I got out of the military, I was a private investigator. And what I did was I used my understanding of law from being a private investigator, using my understanding of structure and uniformity and discipline as a soldier, maintaining bearing in the private sector, which means you don't care about hours you work, you just care about the outcome of the mission. And then my years of training in martial arts and in firearms growing up, and I used all of that to make people safe. And that's a totally different thing than, for example, law enforcement. So it's a completely new way of doing things. It's a complete paradigm shift in public safety, and that's what we call it threat management.
Now, one of the more interesting things that I've seen in reviewing your website and videos and the things that you guys are doing is that it is more, it seems to me, revolving more around the traditional role of the peace officer rather than the law enforcement officer. So do you see that your organization has kind of filled a need or come into this vacuum where the peace officer in America has transitioned more to the law enforcement officer, thus creating an opportunity for you, or would that not be a fair characterization?
Well, it will be unfair in that only that what I've done is created an entirely new system, thought process, philosophy, and outcome. So although we use frame of reference to define things, this is completely unique, completely different, and that's because the origin of it is, I started off teaching self-defense in the parks here in Detroit in the early 90s, and I found out that the families need more than education. They needed facilitation, and there was no one willing to protect them. The families literally have, and this is across the country, just in Detroit it's more pronounced because it's, a lot more people in a small space, but there is no such thing as active, proactive protection. There is very little prevention of anything, but especially when it deals with human threat, it's almost completely, completely unheard of to say, I will protect this crime witness, I will protect this victim of rape, robbery, or killing, or some heinous crimes. There is no protection. A lot of people don't know that because, of course, we don't experience these issues. And domestic violence is a serious problem. Thousands of women are attacked every year after going to law enforcement for assistance, and law enforcement does what they're supposed to do, which is enforce laws, which is after you get raped, robbed, or killed. And what we want from television is we would like to not be raped, robbed, and killed, but that's not real life. And so what I did was I bridged the thought process we have as people that we should not be raped, robbed, and killed. And then I bridged it with reality, which is the methodology for creating a community, in this case, multiple communities where we don't have raping, robbing, and killing, and do it without oppressing people, without victimizing civilians, without killing unarmed people, without killing at all. In fact, they're creating an entirely new thought process and philosophy to correspond with this paradigm shift in actual application, which is called the anti-kill philosophy. So Threat Management Center, my facility, teaches specifically people how not to kill other people while creating safety for themselves, their communities, or their corporations.
Now, what you said was really interesting a moment ago that I want to touch on, and that is, at least my takeaway, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that many people cynically look at law enforcement as, they'll come to a crime scene and fill out some paperwork after it's happened. There's no, as you were pointing out, more proactive protection. And it sounds like that is a service that you guys are offering to try and do something more assertive, more involved, more proactive. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And to take it a step further, we create conditions where violence can't occur. So rather than responding to situations which have been allowed to matriculate and to turn into something that, has extenuating circumstances, we look for conditions that could lead to a negative, and then we destabilize those conditions to create a hospitable environment for communities that's free of violence and crime. So instead of saying, well, I'm going to find out this person's going to do crime, what we do is go talk to them, greet them, communicate with them in a very positive way, and then create a way for them to leave if they have negative interactions planned, or a way for them to stay and be extremely happy that we met, because we're going to help them find the correct real estate agent or the right family that they're looking for. Or if they're lost, we'll help them find their way out. We'll help change their tire. We'll help get them fuel for their car if they run out of gas. All those things can be done prior to them rape, robbing, killing someone, or getting raped, robbed, or killed themselves, if we are proactive and preemptive and solution seeking and look at people as though they are family, not as a duty. You cannot protect humans as a duty. It is an act of love. You must love humans. You must love humanity in order to protect humanity. That's one of the core issues that people are having some challenges with understanding.
Commander Brown, it seems like one of the distinctions that you're drawing here is that in a protective role, you really are more concerned about the protection of people and property rather than simply enforcing the will of the political class. And I'm wondering, could you give us maybe an example of what this would look like? People get pulled over, or they get stopped by police for various reasons. Some of them could be very obvious if an actual crime has taken place. Some of them may seem a little bit more nebulous depending upon what the political rules are where they are. In the case of Threat Management Center, how would that look different? Could you contrast that for us?
First of all, we're non-invasive, so we do not go create conditions for conflict. If, for example, we see an individual walking with a hoodie on in the middle of the night, we drive up while video recording openly so they can see it, and we talk to them. We say, "Hi, how are you, young man?" And typically they'll say, "I'm fine," and try to hide their face. We'll say, "Well, listen, young man, when you're out here, be careful, because there could be criminals that may rob you." And they're like, "Okay, you mean people like me?" "No, we mean criminals. Of course, you're not a criminal. You're just a guy walking. You haven't done any crime." And they're like, "Okay, well, why are you filming me?" "Sir, we're filming you because, we're required to." You see, they make us film our interactions to show we're being respectful and polite to people. So they're like, "Oh, they make you?" I don't know who they is, but yeah, they make us. And as a result, psychologically, we are not adversaries. The way that I just spoke with this young man, even though he's a criminal, means that he doesn't feel as though I'm here to kill him or to in any way create a conflict with him. I'm not here to capture him. I'm here to create a condition where, guess what? Actually, he's going to be a good winner too. Because when he can't rape, rob, or kill anyone today in this community, he's going to move on and he's going to go away. Now, the idea is to create enough safe communities so he has no one to rape, rob, and kill. And that is our objective, by the way. And one of the things to stress is that this is not the money is a byproduct. So I help people under all conditions of my staff. We help people everywhere. So my greatest stories are of helping people that have nothing to do with money. The greatest stories are stuff that have, we're just driving by, walking by. I had a staff member that one of our team members pulls his Hummer over. He sees a man beating a woman across her face with a belt. She's pregnant. He pulls out his baton, walks towards him with his camera on, and the guy just takes off running. No contact, no violence. He gives her first aid, calls an ambulance. Ambulance comes and gives her assistance, and we take off back to where we're supposed to go, which is making sure precious cargo is delivered because the establishment could not stop robberies and hijackings of cigarette trucks throughout Detroit since the 20s.
So,
and we brought all that to closure.
Let me
all the
ask,
hijackings have stopped in Detroit.
The example that you just raised, I find to be an interesting one, because people will say, well, we employ peace officers / law enforcement officers to protect the general welfare, the common good, the community. And that is why through taxation, we all, pay into the system by which they can protect and serve us. What you're saying, and maybe we need to fill in the gap here, who are your clients specifically, right? So who is paying you? And if you're being paid by people to guard their home or their gated community or whatever that arrangement looks like, that I'd appreciate you filling us in on, is it part of your, value-added service that you then just generally look out for people as you're coming and going, or why is it that you're helping people beyond just your client base?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. First of all, my client base is simply there to service my purpose, okay? So this is a very important psychological aspect of human behavior. To change my outcomes, to create, accidental false positive kills, all you have to do is change our philosophy, change our methodology. And good people will kill the wrong person. They will, do all kinds of heinous acts in the name of righteousness and goodness, but it's just the way the human mind works. And so what I did was create a system based on the reality of purpose. My purpose is to protect people, right? So I had to find a way to fund that. So I found a way for people to pay for a service, which will put myself into positions where I could help people while being paid. So I don't really care who the people are. I don't care if you're, kid at a bus stop, old person walking down the street, someone in your house and someone starts to invade you. I'm going to stop what I'm doing for money if necessary and go over there and help people. And to legally make it so that I cannot be stopped, I have to get legal authority to do so, meaning both an understanding of how we apply the law as civilians, as well as any legal methods that I can use to explain my situation of exigency and my need to assist this person that I am not being paid to assist. And so, this is the purpose of the organization of myself. So I can't do it all myself. So I had to train people. And that was always, my objective. I've always trained students since day one. I had a dog and a rifle when I started. And then I just started training students. And when I first started, I went to a building owner who was very rich on the east side of Detroit. And he was experiencing these home invasions and murders. I lived in the buildings as a tenant. And the area was called Crack Alley. It's extremely violent and extremely what they call at risk. And really what I found out was it's at risk for poverty and not a lack of protection. There's nothing wrong with the people. It's total, television BS and systemic institutionalized racism that makes us believe something that's completely fabricated. I am from the suburbs. I believed that the inner city African Americans, just like I was told on TV, weren't helping the police department. They weren't willing to work with them. They weren't willing to come forward and snitch. Okay, that's totally disrespectful and completely inappropriate and not true. Actually, the people would love to have the police do something. Anytime they don't say anything, it's because they don't want to be firebombed, abducted, and murdered. The only thing worse than having someone else get firebombed, abducted, and murdered is if you and your family gets firebombed, abducted, and murdered, which is what's going to happen when you tell on criminals. So since there's no one protecting anyone here or any other city or any other country town, and a lot of people in the suburbs don't know this, there's no one protecting you either. Okay? So when your disgruntled employee or ex-husband or ex-wife decides they're going to terrorize you, that's when you find out, oh my God, I have no protection here in Oshkosh, B'gosh, Wisconsin, Wyoming, Nebraska, or Detroit. So we just have this fantasy from watching television that somehow police are going to come around, we tell them about the disgruntled employee, We tell them about the, ex-husband or ex-wife, and then we'll be fine. That's not true. Law enforcement is a response-based organization that responds to the enforcement options related to the breaking of laws, which means you have to break the law first. They can't go around going, I think you're going to rape someone. I think you're going to, pre-crime concept. That's not real. So nor do we really want them running around going, I think you're going to do something, right? And start, taking people to custody or something. So the key is to do what we do, which is very, very difficult. The first thing you have to do is become selfless. You see, I can't go out to the darkness and greet a would-be, violent criminal if I'm thinking about my safety. So our first rule is everyone's safety is more important than our own. That's number one. The moment I think I'm more important than the people that I'm protecting, I cannot protect them, period. So law enforcement officers were traditionally trained to believe, and a lot of them came with the idea, I'd like to be a hero and help people, but they were quickly corrected and trained to believe that the most important thing for a law enforcement officer is to get home to their family safe at night. Well, that is exactly the opposite of what I teach and what we do for the past 25 years. And what we do is create conditions for people to survive by making sure that we treat them like our family, and we want them to get to their family before we could ever get to our own.
Let's talk for a moment about qualified immunity, and maybe we can have you explain what it is and the difference between security personnel who don't have qualified immunity versus law enforcement that does have qualified immunity, and how that affects the way that they deal with the public.
Very, very excellent point. First of all, know that private security is a watered-down version of law enforcement officers. So whatever you don't like about police, you're going to double not like about security officers, and in every single category, and in three you never thought of. And that's because they're simply security guards, typical security guards, which I do not have or represent in any way. They are just either ex-law enforcement officers who were either kicked off the police force or wannabes, or they were, retired, which means they're definitely not trying to get into something now. Or they're kids, be a security guard before you go to do something real with your life. No one grows up to be a security officer, all right? So the only way you can become one, a security officer, is to make a lot of bad mistakes in a row and bad decisions, and then you become a security officer normally. Now, there are security officers that try their best, but if you don't practice something, I don't care what it is, you're not going to be good at it. So bowling, can't do it. Bowlers practice 3 hours a day. How would a security officer practice dealing with everything from fires to dogs to humans that want to attack other people? Remember, they're already there. They're not the police. So they're already at the situation when someone pulls a gun or a knife. When there's, if you know how many guards get killed every year, you would be astounded. It's a lot. Guards are stabbed and shot all the time in America. They just don't count in our stats, so you don't get a parade when you're a security officer.
Wow.
Security officers are abducted, they're raped, they're beaten to death. They're just completely ignored by the media. 6 of my staff have been shot. I beg the media, they always say, well, sensationalization of shootings. Listen, I could not make any of the networks at all, locally here in Detroit, cover any of my shootings of any of my staff. And this took place over a 5-year period. Six of my staff members were shot. And I got them to come out one time and talk about me and my program. And they talked about me, my program, and the money, and how I was getting paid, which I wasn't getting paid. It was almost no money at all. And that was more important to them than my guy who got shot 6 times.
Wow. And
my point of calling him was not for media publicity for me and my organization. It was because I wanted to put some pressure out there. This guy's sister's a lawyer too, by the way. So he's not some, lower class, guy that they can ignore. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your classification is socioeconomically. This individual's sister could not make a police report exist that would show any details. So imagine in 6 of our shootings that took place over a 5-year period. Obviously, we're not in Afghanistan. There's lots of witnesses, and no one has ever been questioned or arrested for shooting us, not once.
That's very interesting. I especially find the media angle interesting, right? Because there's so much, by default, public sympathy and awareness on the police side, but on the privatization side, that is so interesting that there's not that default there.
You never hear it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to ask a final question as we lead towards wrapping up the episode. And I should say really quick for our listeners that if they're interested in finding more information about the Threat Management Center, the show notes page for today is societyandthestate.com/29. Now, Commander Brown, final question I have is you're very localized right now. And so talk to us about, we have listeners all over the place who are going to say, hey, that's really interesting. Maybe my community would be interested in that. I'd love to get training or whatever. Do you have plans in the future to scale this? Are there affiliates or what does that look like?
Absolutely. We are coordinating with groups, individuals, and individuals that are looking to see societies change and make a peaceful world. And they're willing to invest, and we're looking for people that are. We're going to be opening training centers in New Hampshire, where you saw me in that area there. There's lots of supporters there. They want to open a threat management center. So we're going to open a facility there. There's going to be Austin, Texas. Was there earlier this year, and they responded very well. So we have interest there, people that want to open a threat management center in Austin, Texas. And we just got back from San Francisco. And there, they definitely are interested in opening a threat management center in the Bay Area. So we are definitely looking for people that want threat management centers. That's training locations that trains both civilians and law enforcement officers in methods of creating this paradigm shift, which is safety without violence. Well, that's what we do. So it's prosperity that is the byproduct. When people are not raped, robbed, and killed, when people are not offended, when you're not incarcerating people, when you're not oppressing people, when there's no invasive interaction and it's disrespectful in any way, then what happens is you have a great quality of life. And that's what we focus on, is how to create a great quality of life for families. And the natural byproduct of that is that all the companies in the area begin to experience an increase in wealth, just like the landowners, because you have more taxpayers, you have more families that are there, that are paying, whether they're renters, whether they're owners. You have more increase because a safer society is a more successful society as a byproduct.
Well, I applaud you for turning the abstract into the tangible, right? Many people talk about, we got to privatize and get the government out or change things and do it differently. And here you are implementing something, giving people an example to look to replicate, and to consider in their community. So really appreciate you taking the time to share the Threat Management Center. As I said, today's show notes page will be societyandthestate.com/29. Commander Brown will send people to your website. Hope they learn more. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great, and we look forward to people checking out our website and seeing it's a real thing. You can really make a safe, successful society without violence and without incarceration and without increasing revenue streams by harassing your taxpayers and your citizens.
That is a laudable goal that we share. So thank you once again for joining us.
You've been listening to Society and the State. For show notes, archives, and more great content, visit societyandthestate.com.